a remote village, hidden between the forest and the marsh, there once lived a gray cat named Vaska. Everyone knew him. Lazy by day, sly by night, he wandered on his own and rarely lingered in one place. At first, people thought he was just an ordinary village cat, but then they began to notice strange things. Vaska's eyes were not yellow like other cats, but dark amber with a reddish gleam, as if fire smoldered within them. When he looked at a person, they felt a chill, as though a draft from a crack between worlds had passed over their skin. The elders used to say cats were never simple creatures. They could see what was hidden from human eyes and walk roads leading both to the living and the dead. But of Vaska they said more. He's not just a cat, he's the keeper of a curse. For a long time, that was dismissed as superstition, until strange events began to unfold. The children were the first to notice. In the evenings, when they played in the meadow, they heard meowing near the old mill, long, plaintive cries, as if someone were choking. But whenever they came closer, the sound stopped, and the mill stared back at them with black, empty windows. The mill had been abandoned long ago, back in the days of famine. People said the miller had turned to dark forces to keep his grain from vanishing, but paid with his soul. Since then, the wheels rotted, the beams sagged, and only the wind whistled through the stones. And then one day, Vaska disappeared. His owners thought he had gone hunting in the forest, but 3 days passed, then a week, and still no sign of him. Only on the 8th day were paw prints found by the mill. But the prints were strange, too large for a cat, as if his paws had grown heavy overnight, and near the door lay a dead crow, its heart torn out. After that, uneasy nights began in the village. Dogs howled and snapped their chains, hens laid eggs in their nests and then dropped dead. People began seeing two burning eyes in the dark, sometimes in windows, sometimes reflected in wells. Some whispered, "Vaska has returned." But his voice was no longer a cat's. At night, a low growl echoed that sounded too much like human laughter. The village healer, old Avditya, warned, "No good comes from a cat entering the mill. Ancient evil dwells there, always waiting for a guide. And cats are the first to hear its call." Few believed her, until a child went missing. A boy of 7 never came home one evening. They found only his shirt caught on a branch near the forest path, and his small footprints ending at the door of the mill. No one dared approach it after that. Yet every night people heard claws scratching wood, footsteps pacing the upper floors, and the mill seemed to stir with life. In the black windows, 2 eyes flickered, not feline, but far too intelligent. Rumors spread. Some claimed Vaska had become a shapeshifter, walking on 2 legs and hunting for souls to feed his hunger. Others swore the miller's spirit had taken over the cat's body. The worst part was that no one knew for certain. 3 months later, disaster struck. People began vanishing at night. First an old man fetching water, then a young woman returning from a festival. Their belongings were found near the mill, but never their bodies. Only claw marks scarred the wood, and the stench of burning lingered. In that same time, the whole village began dreaming the same dream. Vaska sitting at the bedside, his fiery eyes staring down. People woke drenched in sweat, some with red marks on their chests as if heavy paws had pressed on them in their sleep. One night Avditya herself went to the mill, carrying herbs, coal, and an icon. She swore she would try to banish the evil. By morning she was gone. At the threshold lay only her broken bundle, and the icon charred black, as if burned. After that no one dared to go near. But the cat appeared more and more. He sat on rooftops, peered into windows, followed people on forest paths. Yet the moment one turned around, he was gone. Only deep prints remained, as if struck not by claws but by knives. Then the villagers remembered an old legend passed down by their grandfathers, the tale of the guide cat. It was said that sometimes a creature is born able to open the road between the living and the dead. Such a cat could see both sides, and if the darkness lured him, he would lead souls away. And Vaska had become that guide. They said that on the night of the full moon, the passage would open, and the whole village bloodline would be led into the marshes, into a place where there is no light, no time. And at the head of the procession would walk the cat, no longer gray but black as pitch, with eyes like burning coals. Winter passed, the village lived in fear. No one went out at night, doors and windows were covered with cloth. Thresholds were marked with crosses, and bowls of milk were set out as if hoping that Vaska was still only a cat and would leave them alone once he was fed. But each morning the milk was found black, as though soot had been poured into it. In spring, a wanderer came to the mill. No one knew his name. He carried a charred staff and a sack on his back. The villagers greeted him coldly, for in such times, strangers were shunned. But he explained that he had heard the legends of the guide cat and had come here on purpose. In his family, he said, there was an ancient vow. If such a beast were ever born, someone must stand in its way. The people wanted to drive him off, but that night he went to the mill on his own. Villagers saw him walking the path as the wind roared in the treetops and the sky blackened with clouds. By morning they found only his staff snapped in two. Beside it were tracks, no longer cats, no longer humans, like hooves but elongated, with claws at the ends. The ground was scorched black where he had walked. From then on, they knew. Vaska was no longer a beast, he had become something greater. At night the mill glowed with a bloody light. Voices echoed within, as though a crowd had gathered, though the building had long been empty. Cries and sobs mingled with coarse laughter, and the grindstones screeched as if they were grinding bones. People began to disappear again. One night a young mother woke to find her baby gone from the cradle. The doors and windows were locked, yet by the stove sat a cat, gray, its fur scorched, with two fires burning in its eyes. She screamed, and the cat vanished as if it had melted into the air. The child was never found. The elders whispered that Vaska now gathered souls to feed the millstones. Each missing villager became a grain in the black flour. And when the mill was full, the worst would come. The road to the swamp of the dead would open, and the living would be indistinguishable from shadows. Soon, strange marks appeared on villagers' skin like claw scratches etched from the inside out. They grew pale, weakened, and died within days. Before death, their eyes glowed yellow, like a cat's. They were buried, but by morning paw prints appeared on their graves. Word spread to neighboring villages. People avoided the cursed place by many miles. The road became overgrown, yet travelers still reported hearing meowing in the woods, long, drawn out, beckoning. Some turned back. Those who went on vanished, and more often people saw the cat itself. He had grown enormous, taller at the shoulder than a dog, his fur blackened with soot, his eyes burning like coals that breathed cold. He did not attack directly. He walked alongside, unseen, until suddenly he was closer than a shadow. Few remained in the village. Those who tried to leave never reached the city. Horses reared, carts overturned, and from the forest came the sound of a cat's laughter. It seemed Vaska would let no one go. Then old Avdija returned, though she had vanished months before. But it was no longer her. Her face was twisted, her eyes empty, her voice rasping. She entered the elder's house and said, "Vaska has gathered half, the rest will come with the full moon." And she smiled, her teeth like needles. By morning her body was gone. On the wall, scratched by claws, one word remained: wait. From then on, the people counted the days to the full moon. Every evening felt like the last. Vaska appeared more often, and none doubted anymore. This was no cat, but a herald of an ancient hunger. He came not for food, not for play. He came to collect debts, the blood and sins of the miller. In the final week before the full moon, no one slept. Each house kept vigil with candles and prayers, but the candles snuffed out on their own, and the prayers stuck in throats. Children wailed, hens pecked themselves bloody, dogs howled and went mad. And on the night when the moon grew round and heavy as a grindstone, the first true cry was heard. It was the earth itself screaming. The ground split and black mist seeped from beneath the roots. The mill roared and groaned, its wheels turning of their own accord. And in the din, all heard it. Footsteps, at first light and soft, like cat paws, then heavy, like the blows of monstrous claws. And in the doorway of the mill appeared a silhouette tall, stretched, with the tail and the head of a cat. His eyes blazed so fiercely that the moon itself dimmed, and the people understood. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. The silhouette in the mill doorway wavered, as if its body were woven from smoke and fire. But with every heartbeat it grew denser, until a beast took shape, vast and black, its paws ending not in claws but in long, crooked, bony fingers. Its head was still a cat's, but the stretched muzzle brimmed with human teeth, from which dark saliva dripped. Its tail lashed the walls, making the boards crack. This was Vaska, or what once bore his name. The villagers screamed. Some ran, others fell to their knees and covered their faces. But where was there to run? The forest was already swallowed in black fog. The marsh swelled like living flesh, pulling every breath into itself. Then the creature stepped into the street. Each stride sent tremors through the earth, the grass blackening under its weight. Dogs strained and choked as smoke filled their mouths, then dropped dead. Children cowered behind their mothers, but Vaska's burning eyes saw them all. He lifted his head to the moon and let out a sound, not a meow, not a roar, but a long human moan, filled with 1,000 voices at once. The voices of the lost, those he had taken. They cried and begged, but they no longer had bodies. The ground shook, and from it rose hands black, thin, made of shadow. They were the souls he had gathered. They clutched at the living, dragged them into cracks. People fell, screamed, vanished into black fissures. Some remembered the church at the edge of the village. A crowd fled there and barred the doors. Candles flared bright, then snuffed out, and in the dark 2 eyes gleamed. He was already inside, as though walls meant nothing to him. Someone struck with a cross, but it melted like wax. The survivors fled to the river. Water was said to be a boundary evil could not cross. People hurled themselves into the freezing current, flailed, clung to stones. But Vaska walked the surface as though it were solid ground. His reflection in the water was not a cat at all, but a monster with wings and dozens of heads, each one human, each face twisted in torment. Then an old woman, last to keep her senses, screamed, "He will never be sated. He will never leave. He is no cat." The mill itself has risen, and it chose him as its guide. But the earth swallowed her, and her cry ended. The night stretched endlessly. The moon seemed frozen, refusing to move. None knew how many were lost. At dawn the village stood empty. Houses charred, wells filled with ash, but the mill shone with new boards, as though freshly built. Its wheels turned, filling the air with the smell of scorched flour. They say travelers found the place the next day. They saw no one, only a cat, gray, striped, ordinary to the eye. He sat on the roof of the mill, calmly washing his face, but his eyes glowed red, and the travelers left quickly, never looking back. Since then, the village has vanished from maps. Forest and swamp swallowed it whole. Only hunters whisper that if you stray at night, you may hear meowing. Long, drawn out, pulling you on. If you follow, you never return. And on rare winter nights, when the moon is full, a cat emerges from the forest, gray, striped, looking harmlessly domestic. He walks slowly, unhurried, and sits outside houses where children live. People know. If Vaska looks in the window, by morning the child will be gone. But worse is this: those who gaze too long into his eyes say they see the mill reflected there. The grindstones turn, and flour falls to the floor. only it is not flour, but ground human bone. They say one day the stones will stop, but that will not be the end, it will only be the beginning. For the flour will be baked into bread, and whoever eats it will know hunger without end. And Vaska will return to feed them with darkness. That is why, when people hear meowing at night, they whisper, "Do not answer, do not call, do not meet its eyes," because that is no cat, it is a road leading where no one ever returns. And that road always begins the same way, with the soft sound of paws on the floor and two ember eyes burning in the dark.